Okay, you know what? Diana, I need you to walk me through getting the duplicate screen because I don't see the duplicate screen on the YouTube. Diana? Okay, you know what? Diana, I need you to walk me through getting the duplicate screen because I don't see the duplicate screen on the YouTube. Okay, all right.
We almost there yet? We'll be starting here shortly, folks.
Frank, read Jimmy's chat message.
Hold on. Betsy and Diana, Jimmy Barrera says, the program appears to be working live when viewing the HAS YouTube channel. Watching it on HAS YouTube channel now. So are we good to go then, girls?
Okay, I do see it up there, Frank. So I think maybe it is coming through now.
Okay, yeah, Bob Sewell concurs with what Jimmy said. I can concur, seems to be working. So yeah, let's just run with it, I guess. Okay, does that sound good to everybody? Betsy?
Okay, I do see it up there, Frank. So I think maybe it is coming through now.
Okay, yeah, Bob Sewell concurs with what Jimmy said. I can concur, seems to be working. So yeah, let's just run with it, yes. Okay, that sound good? Okay. All right, let's go ahead and get started then. Are we ready?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go.
With it. Looks good now. Thank you. Thanks for your patience. It looks good.
Oh, we're fine. We're fine. Okay, hello again, everyone on Zoom and YouTube. I'm Frank Kozar, the interim president of the Houston Archeological Society, and this is our July virtual meeting of the Society. And the subject of our meeting tonight is a recap we do of the TAS Field School held yearly every June. This time for the second consecutive year at 41 KR 754, the Kemosabe site in Kerr County, Texas, which was hosted by the Hill Country Archeological Association. 41 KR 754 is a multi-component site containing late Paleo-Indian through late prehistoric assemblages. We will not have one main speaker tonight, but several HAS members will detail their experiences at field school which will be followed by my presentation on the rebuilding effort underway for the Caddo Grass House destroyed in 2019 at the Caddo Mountain State Historic Site near Alto, Texas. And then a quick preview of next year's field school near Nacogdoches at the ruins of the Mission Concepcion site by either Dr. Tom Middlebrook or myself. Tom's off on vacation somewhere and said he might have a dicey Wi-Fi connection. So if not, I'll just give a couple quick notes on it next year. So I'm sorry. Okay, here's a note from Eric Oksanen, the PI at the Kemosabe site. And I'll just read it real quick here. The 2022 field school was, as has unfortunately come to its end. The site 41 KR 744 Kemosabe site is on the ranch of landowner Marvin Golke, who was outstanding for us for 2 years, under whose stewardship the site has been investigated with the Hill Country Archeological Association. Located on a broad terrace of the Guadalupe River, the site was used for thousands of years, creating at least 4 burned rock middens. One goal of the excavations was to gather data to determine how the site was used, whether continuously by small groups of hunter-gatherers or by large group meetings and at greater intervals. Continuing from last year's excavations, we quickly reestablished units and opened new areas. Projectile points, bifaces, flake tools, and discrete burned rock features were significantly more plentiful this year. Late archaic projectile points such as Pedernales, Edgewood, and Bulverde were joined by middle archaic Nolan, Lahita, and early triangular forms. Beneath the base of the burned rock middens, burned rock features, including earth ovens, are associated with an increase in the size of debitage and the amount of debitage. During final days, early archaic and late Paleo Indian occupations indicate thousands of years of occupation. For the past 2 years, our TAS excavators did a fantastic job under the site supervisors, ensuring a professional 11 job was completed. The excavations exposed 144 square meters of the site and documented 24 new features. Analysis will likely increase this number. The youth area continued to produce groundstone fragments, suggesting that plant processing was a major activity. Almost no bone was recovered, likely the result of poor preservation. Additional studies on the sediments, feature fill, and collected artifacts remains that will further refine our knowledge of the archaic lifeways during periods of major climatic changes, from late Paleo-Indian through middle archaic altithermal. A period of elevated temperatures and decreased rainfall into the late archaic at approximately 2000 BP, when the intensive view of the site seemed to decline. Okay, the conditions at the site, challenging the entire time. Period of elevated temperatures and decreased rainfall into the late archaic at approximately 2000 BP, when the intensive view of the site seemed to decline. Let me back that up. I started to say the weather conditions at the site were challenging. We had high winds most days, starting on the first day on Saturday. They kind of peaked, if I recall, Monday and Tuesday, where we had 20 to 30 knot winds. And obviously we came in one morning and found this action going on there. You can also see holding down shades was a challenge also. One of mine was destroyed, several other were destroyed, or we just took the tarps off and we're screening in the sun, which, considering most of the temperatures, I saw a temperature on my car of 109 degrees one day. So it was very, very challenging out there. All right. Geoff Mills, can you talk a bit about your unit's experience working with Joe Rogers and what y'all found, please? which, considering most of the temperatures, I saw a temperature on my car of 109 degrees one day. So it was very, very challenging out there. All right.
Okay.
Geoff Mills, can you talk a bit about your unit's experience working
Sure.
with Joe Rogers and
Sure.
what y'all found, please?
Okay. Last year,
Which, considering most of the temperatures, I saw a temperature on my car of 109 degrees one day.
okay.
So it was very, very, very challenging out there.
So you need to stop talking, Frank,
All right.
because I can't.
Geoff Mills, can you talk a bit
I
about
can
your
talk,
unit's
yes.
experience working
Sure.
with Joe Rogers and what y'all found, please?
Okay. Last year,
Which, considering
I need to-
most of the
hold on, I need to turn-
I saw a temperature on my
I need-
car of
I need to-
109 degrees one day.
I need to turn off my hold on. So you need to stop talking, Frank. Yeah. Okay, are you ready for me to start?
Go ahead, Geoff.
Okay, all right. Well, last year I was also at Kerrville in Field School, and together with Dan Massey and Courtney, we actually, yes. We seem to have an echo going on here. Okay. Last year. We okay.
Geoff, if you have your
Last
YouTube,
year,
you have to turn off YouTube if you've got it on too.
okay. How do I do that? You want me to leave? I'll leave this meeting. Okay.
Geoff, if you have your YouTube, you have to turn off YouTube if you've got it on too.
Okay.
Geoff, maybe also if you just mute your YouTube, that might help.
Well, let me try and get rid of YouTube. Okay, I can't see my I can't see. Yeah, I can't see my YouTube at all. Where is it?
Geoff, just go ahead and talk about your unit and don't worry about it. If we get an echo, we get an echo, but that way we'll get through your portion of this, okay?
Okay, I'm going to talk. It's going to be echoey. Okay, I'm going to start again. So last year at Field School site, we executed a 4x4 unit with Dan Massey and okay, I'm starting.
It's fine. Keep going. Keep going.
Okay. Right. and Courtney Wied, and we found very little. So this year we found a lot more interesting artifacts. And if we go to the next slide. Okay, so, okay, this slide here, yeah, but so on the left, on top left, we have the oval knife that Courtney found. And then I found a pedinalis proximal, and then 2 distal end points. And we determined that this was a lithics manufacturing site. And the crew chief on this site was
Just keep talking, Geoff. We hear you, and everything else is just background noise, so don't worry about it. Just keep talking.
Okay. Okay, the crew chief was Joe Rogers, and he worked on a neighboring 4x4 unit. And in that unit, they found I go to the next slide. Okay. Okay. And this is the other units that Joe Rogers was crew chief for. Basically a hearth feature and debitage scatter and a possible butted knife biface, which is also called a Kerrville biface. And
Geoff, if that volume, can you turn your volume down on your system or computer? Maybe that would help you.
okay, I'm gonna have to find out how to do that right now.
If not,
So,
just try.
I'll just carry on. So anyway, that was pretty much what we found. The whole point of the
I'm sorry. Okay, thank you, Geoff, for your input. And we're going to move on to Dr. Sarah Chesney. Can you talk for a few moments, Sarah, about your crew's experience at Field School?
Sure, I can do that. Are you going to give me a slide? There we go. All right. Oh, yep. Whoa. There I am. So I had a fantastic crew at Field School. Sadly, we found pretty much nothing, unlike everybody else, but that's okay. We bonded in adversity, including the adversity of the drier than like moon rock units, which you can see off to the edge. There's a picture of my crew, and then there's poor Max Hall dumping water in his unit, which was basically like breaking rock. Mostly what we had in my unit was a rock scatter, which, as someone who is, yeah, exactly. That's what we had. They were like, maybe it's a feature. And I said, no, I don't think so. It was just a rock scatter, but it was really good practice. I had a lot of new people in my unit. So it became, so it was a really good practicing moment. I had a teacher and who was in the hat right there, in the gray shirt, whose name was Parker. And next to him is Alex, who was a rising senior, very interested in archaeology. So they had a lot of, they got some good experience doing some cool stuff in Field School. And I spent a day with the youth group. That was that other picture, talking to them about historic ceramics, mostly because that was not something in theory that they were supposed to find in their units. There was a little funny moment where one of my ceramics that I was showing off ended up in the youth group artifact screen somehow, strangely. So Doug had to come running over here and figure out what was going on. So I told him that from now until the end of our lives, I would just follow him around his various sites and throw random ceramics in it, because then he'll know it's me. Anyway, it was good. It was and that was mostly because to give the kids who were primarily, weighing rock and finding points, to give them a sense of what the stuff that, that we find on historic properties looks like. You can go to the next slide. And then, I was lucky enough to have one of our wonderful longtime HAS members, Sandy Rogers, in my unit, who I basically designated as assistant chief. Or at least when she wasn't being blown down by the wind. She was quite literally blown face first into the unit, I think on the second day, which was pretty funny. I mean, I thought it was funny. I don't think Sandy did at the time. But that's a picture of what my unit looked like at the end of the week. Barth Robbins in the hat, who is from parts of North Texas, but he's a longtime TAS Field School gentleman and a very, very wonderful guy to hang out with. He ended up being the only dude in our unit for about 4 days, but he handled it very well. Rathbury, who is Emma's child, joined us for a while, did some fantastic work, and the two girls behind Barth, Mackenzie and Samantha, were one of them was brand new. The other one had been to Kerrville last year, which was great. And in fact, Mackenzie was fantastic because she stepped up and decided that she wanted to learn how to map. So she mapped that whole unit, and I was super excited because that's a thing I hate doing. So anytime someone is has an aptitude for it and also willing to do it and to tell people what need to be done, it was really fantastic. So while I didn't find much in my unit, it was a fantastic crew and I really enjoyed it. Last year I was at Kerrville, but I was at the historic site. So this was my first time digging on the prehistoric area, and it was actually very fun, even though we didn't find anything.
All right, thank you, Sarah. That was excellent. Yeah, I know you had a good crew. I came and visited often over there. All right, Garry Hartman, can you tell us about your unit working under crew chief Keith Elwell?
Oh yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Got you loud and clear.
It was a good year. We found all kinds of debitage and utilized fret flakes. That early triangular was at a different unit. Can I interrupt you? I'm not sure if this slide is from your unit or not. I put it in there, not knowing if it was yours. No, okay, that's not. The Perdinalis, yeah, that's D1. That's my unit. Okay. And that's next to my trowel. Okay. After it came out, it looked pretty much like that without the tip. It was very, very nice point. We found one last year exactly 5 centimeters over that one. That's where we ended. So it was really, really comical. That other point, that's not mine. Those double blades were in another adjoining unit. They weren't ours either.
That was that young man from Missouri, I think, that found those.
Yeah, they were kicking it. They were having a great time. Yeah, they don't have anything like that up in Missouri. I guess they don't get together like we do.
His dad shopped around looking for field schools, and TAS is the best. So they drove 500 miles to come down there for this. Yeah. I ate dinner with them a couple of times. Pretty nice guys. Yes. We did find a lot of utilized flakes. I think our flake count was over 300, debitage count. I kind of lost track. That's also from an adjoining unit. That's another early triangular. And it has a real good bevel along the base and the top. That's how you can tell it's early triangular versus, any other triangular. We did find what I think is a skinning tool. I don't know if I don't think I've submitted any pictures of it. I don't think you have a picture of it.
In essence, it looked like a flying saucer like this, with only one side was cortex and one side was flaked all the way around. It was truly a biface, but one side was utilized very little. But the way it fit in the palm of your hand would be ideal for a scraper, a hide scraper. And it was just good. We had the same guys as last year, -1, and we had 2 students that they did very well. I really enjoyed this year.
All right, thank you, Gary. Appreciate it.
No.
All right, let's see. Next slide. This is HAS member Tom Williams was a crew chief near Sarah Chesney. And Tom's not here tonight, but he left notes stating that they found lots of firecrack rock with many large cobbles in the 10 to 40 centimeter depth range, along with one possible Nolan point he sent me a picture of. And we're going to go and zip through the rest of these here quickly. TAS president, Dr. Liz Kuhn-Wynn, our very own, had dinner with, at the bottom here, her daughter, Catherine, and this is Lauren Miller, another HAS member and archaeologist with, I'm not sure which firm. Here's a slide of TxDOT experimental archaeologist Chris Ringstaff, who attended and was giving flint knapping lithic demonstrations in the area where the field lab was set up, and many members attended at least one of his sessions. And Sharon Menegaz, come on in. Since Emma Maddie is overseas, can you say a few words about the field lab set up at the old farmhouse at the site? And then after that, we're going to have about 8 or 10 slides for the youth group too. And I can kind of scroll through those and you can comment as we go along.
Okay, I can do that. I only got to go to lab one day when the kids were on their field trip, but it was extremely well run and a very pleasant place to sit under some big old pecan trees. By the time I was there on Wednesday, there were a lot of things to process and it just ran extremely smoothly. Emma and a lot of other people that were working there all week had everything accessible to us and they were able to process a whole lot of artifacts. And it's always nice, as you know, if you get to do both, if you get to work in the field and then see the artifacts all cleaned up and ready to be analyzed. So if you want to move on. Okay, the youth group. Yeah, the youth group again is always well attended and always well run. And of course, we're lucky enough to have Doug Boyd and Marnie Francel running it. There's the picture we call Doug Boyd in the wild while we were waiting for screens one day, not to ever leave idle hands. He had the adults sing the Titanic song, which we present every year at Field School. But he's always helpful and is wonderful with the kids. We probably had an average of 20 adults and I think it was about 23 kids every day. And of course, our adults include our state archaeologist, Brad Jones. You can go ahead and scroll up. We found a lot of biface fragments, approximately this size. I would guess that in my paperwork, I noted at least a dozen. We had 8 units, so that's 32 quadrants, and we turned in over 100 level bags. So we, again, last year set up us being right on top of the cultural. Now that's Barth Robbins' granddaughter, Gracie, who literally has grown up at Field School and pretty much runs her own units now. And her group was responsible for finding 4 or 5 of those biface fragments that we had. And again, of course, they get to show them off and ring the cowbell to make all the adults around them feel bad about themselves when we have good finds. And again, they do all the digging, the older kids do the mapping. We have a good time and they get to learn a little bit of something new, like working with Sarah or Jack Johnson every day. So these kids will probably all grow up at Field School too. And there's Gracie, of course, measuring and finishing off one of her units. Here's the Titanic at Field School. Again, with the weather, it was a little dangerous holding that big plywood Titanic in the 30-mile-an-hour winds. And so Tom Williams and Doug Boyd performed a little surgery, and it now is in 2 pieces to keep the kids a little safer, since we seem to encounter these winds fairly often at Field School. The Titanic has already been broken in half, but not by an iceberg for us. And again, Dr. Liz bringing popsicles was a big hit, because the day she came was probably one of the hottest days there.
All right, that's the last one. Thank you, Sharon, and all the other members who contributed to that presentation. Okay, for the middle portion of our meeting tonight, I'm going to talk a little bit about, I had the privilege to work at the Cattle Mountain State Historic Site near Alto, Texas last week for 4 days, and I had a great time on a project that is very significant to the people up there on many levels. For those of you that are not familiar with the Cattle Mountain site, it's over 350 acres of historic cattle lands used as an agricultural site and ceremonial center, with 1 large burial mound and 2 earthwork platform mounds where cattle leaders lived. The area was inhabited for about 1,200 years until the mid-1800s, when European folks moved them out. A little bit about what the village may have looked like maybe about 1,000 years ago, with the larger family units. In the middle here is a little summer house they would build for when it was too hot outside, just as a shade area. And this was a typical Caddo family house as we envision it today, as they left no written drawings or directions, obviously, on how to build one, just verbal histories from Caddo elders passed down through the years. The one you're looking at here was construction in 2016 on the site by Caddo from Oklahoma and Texas, and volunteers from across Texas. And then came April 13th, 2019. What the folks up in Northeast Texas call the Schoc experience. On April 13, 2019, an EF3 tornado passed over the site, destroying the grass house and the museum, with 1 fatality and over 4 dozen injuries. There were so many trees knocked down on State Route 21, which is the only road that runs east and west through that area, that it took 3 hours for EMS and ambulances to get to the site, because they had to cut all the trees in the middle of the roads in order to push them aside. They also had 6 life flight helicopters come in to remove the badly injured. And you can see some more of I've got some stories that I won't bore you with tonight of some of the people who were thrown 100 feet and are working on the current house up there now. Archaeology was done at Cattle Mounds first in the late 1930s by the Work Progress Administration. I think that was 1939 to 1942. And from 1968 to the late 70s by University of Texas professor Dr. Deanne Story and her crew. And this is how we envisioned that they conducted a house building where the entire village would participate. Back in years gone by, you see they had kind of like a tree structure stuck in the middle there, rebuilding the house, and then the pine poles on the outside. And we were told that they could do it in 1 day, which I believe we had 14 days on the calendar for ours, but we're not as efficient as they were. Okay, the project starts for us. They had 4 poles around a scaffolding here, tie the 4 poles together up there. And then this hoop was installed at the top. It was handmade by these Caddo ladies, and it has ceremonial importance to it too. You can see it's just made of willow, and then it's tied around there. Let me get to the next slide. Now you can see it's installed at the top, and from there, we subsequently tied all the remaining pine poles up to that hoop. You'll see a closer picture of it later on as we go. And bending a pine pole is not easy. The maximum circumference we were shooting for was about 3.5 inches wide. We would take them by trailer to a park across the street, and under an oak tree, we were skinning all the bark off of it. The current drought that Texas is experiencing made it challenging to bend these poles at times. We were hosing them down, keeping them under a tarp in order to keep the flexibility in there. It was also suggested to us that if we soaked them overnight in a pond, that would help out. The one day we did go into the Davy Crockett National Forest and cut some down and installed them that day. They had a lot of flexibility, but the longer you had them cut down and drying out, the more challenging it became to get that flexibility in there. And you can see that this is a team effort here. That's me on the bottom left, trying to keep that angle in there. We didn't want that thing to bow out while they were holding it up there at the top. And the gentleman in the center at the top, John, he was one of the people that was in the hut when the tornado hit and demolished, and he and his wife were thrown 100 feet into the garden over near the museum. And you can tell it's a labor of love for him because he's back up there redoing this thing. He wants it back up again. And here's again another shot of just putting up one pole. There's 11 of us involved in just getting that one pole installed there. After we would get it tied off up at the top, we would then have to fill it in down here in the hole. The hole was about 30 inches deep. All we used was water, dirt, and clay. And then we would pound it back down there with sticks. I love the way they did it back in the day. No sackcrete involved. This is the top just before we finished. You can see the hoop horizontal there a little bit below and how John was tying everything off up there. It's pretty amazing. It's just rope. It's holding this whole thing in place. Okay, this was the last picture I took before the thunderstorms rolled in last Thursday when we got the vertical portion of it done. And 32 poles spaced about 30 inches apart. And this was the spider women, they were calling them, that worked over the weekend. they weigh less than us big guys do. And they're putting horizontal willow poles around, tying them off, and just doing the horizontal ribbing, and eventually the thatch, the switchgrass will be attached to that. Here's the finished product that I got a picture of back on Monday. And it'll sit like this. We're going to come back on November 26th. This is a picture from 6 years ago, the original house being built. I just wanted to have a picture with the switchgrass in front of it there so you get an idea of the bundles that will come up there. They then put a second tier of the horizontal willow ribs across it, and it'll be like a woman's hair clip where it will hold the thatch in place, and then that'll be hidden eventually by the next layer and the next layer and the next layer. A real quick story on this bird up here. Most of you can kind of recognize it. The Caddo would call it, and I'm going to butcher this, I apologize, Kabakeyama ahintu. You know it as a mockingbird. The story I got from a couple of the folks, there were 5 people inside the house as the thunderstorm bore down on them on April 13, 2019. Prior to that day, a mockingbird had taken up residence up in the hoop at the top of the completed Caddo house. On the day of the storm, as the thunderstorm was approaching, the mockingbird flew in the door, circled around in the house, screeching a warning, a panic because its nest was about to destroy. I don't know. But it circled around in there 2-3 times and exited. As it exited the house, the people that were in there said the air pressure dropped. They heard the yelling outside about the tornado. 2 of the people ran for the museum. They did not make it. They just laid down on the ground as it went overhead. I told you about John and his wife being picked up. There was a 3rd person in there too. He was kind of rolled along the ground with the remains of the building and all that. So this picture was taken last Wednesday morning And we wonder if it was the same mockingbird. Probably not, but they do have an 8-year lifespan in the wild, up to 8 years. So we wonder if she's checking out her new home again, coming back as we finish it. And that's the picture of what we hope to achieve by the first week in December here. We're going to go back up November 26th. It's the Saturday after Thanksgiving weekend. Through the following Friday, we assume we will be completed by then, depending on how many people we get up there to help us. And at some point in the future, they will have an opening ceremony and all that up there. I'm sure there'll be cattle from all over. Let me make one more comment about that. We had cattle come in literally from across the country, from Washington State to Florida. The majority of the people that I met that were cattle were from Oklahoma, Texas, and Arkansas. But this was a labor of love for all of them, from Ohio, from Florida, etc. So they'll be back again too in the future. And I'll just leave that picture up here. Let me see if I can put my whole screen back up here and see who's here and who's not. Is Tom Middlebrook on here anywhere? I guess not. And Liz Kuhn-Wynn's not here either. Sarah or Debbie Eller, you can jump in too if you want. Anybody have any knowledge about next year's field school besides the comments I was going to make on Mission Concepcion? Debbie, you don't have anything that you've talked about?
I don't know.
Okay.
The only
Sorry about
thing
that.
I know, Frank, is what you know, right? That it's going to be, it's going to be in NAC. It's based primarily on Mission Concepcion, but depending on what, depending on how many people we have and what we're looking at, it might be a field school where we have several different sites and people are kind of going back and forth, including what might be a Caddo site. But I think, I'm not sure how much of that is, if any of that is finalized, but.
Other than that, Tamara Walter will be the PI.
Yeah, Tamara's going to be the PI. I did find a YouTube video that Dr. Middlebrook presented. I'm not sure who he did it to. It's on YouTube. It's about an hour plus long. This is a labor of love for Tom. I mean, he and a dedicated group of stewards were looking for this thing for maybe about the better part of 10 years. And they've dabbled with it since they discovered it about 2012, 2013. And if anybody on here has other information beyond that, please correct me. But a couple of the notes on it, Mission Concepcion, and I'm not going to go through the whole Spanish name, is associated with the one that is over in San Antonio. This one of the 5 missions over there. This one was built about, I believe it was 1716. It was only open less than 5 years, if I'm not mistaken. It was out on the outer fringes of the Spanish Empire, so that meant, you know, supplies and troops and all that getting out there was marginal at best. So it went into disrepair. Eventually, they said we're going to kind of draw back towards Behar, and so they moved the mission, the friars and all that over to San Antonio. What Tom told me at field school was that there's a Spanish component to the site for field school, a French component, and also a Native American component. And just like Sarah said, there's several different sites. It's on the east side of the Angelina River, somewhere near, I think it's Douglas, Texas, which is about, I believe that's halfway from Alto to Nacogdoches, somewhere in that area. I do not know exactly where it's located. He said that the campground that they're going to have is going to be fabulous too. And he said it'll be a good time to be up there. So anybody have any questions on the program tonight? Anything they want to talk about or contribute on?
There aren't any questions on YouTube or in chat right now.
All right, then. Well, folks, I guess that's it then. Thanks for coming. Appreciate it. Thanks for your attention and all that. Thanks for Gary and Sarah and Sharon and everybody else, Geoff in particular, for muddling through whatever was going on there for a little bit. I feel bad for us for having to struggle through that. I know it does happen. Trust me, I am computer challenged here, and all the HAS members that have had to deal with me the last 2 weeks. If I had any hair left, I would have been pulling it out, putting together my PowerPoint and trying to email it to everybody and all that. So I apologize for those of you that, but do appreciate everybody's help. So, all right, Betsy and Diana, thank you very much. I guess we're done for the evening. Good night, all. Take care.
Good night. Thank you,
Well done,
everybody.
Frank. Good job.
Thank y'all. Bye-bye.
Thank you,
y'all.
everybody, for your patience.
Thank you. Thank you, Louis.